So yeah, so welcome. I think Victoria, do you want to just start off?
Okay, I'm just going to start sharing the screen then.
We still have a few people trickling in, I think, but we're up to 30 people now.
Okay. And
I should have taken this. The
And if you did have a question, you can either ask it during it or you can put it into the chat and we can talk about it afterwards.
okay. So shall I take over then, Ian?
Sure.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good.
Okay, great, great. Nice to see so many friendly faces. Of course, I can't see you right now. All I can see is my first slide here. And so this, as you know, is a report on the bird study that we've been doing for the past 3 months in a particular field at Colony Farm Park. Now, although I'm doing the talking, I'm actually presenting this on behalf of a number of people. And these are the regular observers on this bird survey, and they're named here: Laurie Austin, Darlene Heath, Gay Mitchell, John Saremba, and Cleon Todjum. And I don't know whether Cleon's on the call or not, but I know the others are. And I hope that they feel comfortable in jumping in and correcting me if I say something wrong, or just adding, expanding on what I'm saying if they feel they want to do that. So just to be clear, this is not, although all these people here are BMN members and other BMN members have joined us on this survey and friends as well. This is not a BMN activity because of course, all BMN activities are suspended during COVID. We're just doing this bird survey as individuals. We're walking the publicly accessible trails at Colony Farm Park. And so I just wanted to make that clear at the outset. The other thing I want to make clear is that although it says this is a report on the survey, you can tell by this little icon here that it's not going to be a highly technical talk. In fact, what I'm going to do, or what I hope to do, is really just give you a sampling or a little flavor of what we've been seeing on our survey so far. So even though it's very informal, I've got it rather conventional format. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, what drove us to do this survey, the purpose of the survey, some methods, what we've found so far, just a few of those. And then I'll end with a little bit of a pitch to see if anybody else wants to join us. And by this point in the talk, you're going to be clamoring to want to join us. So let's get started then. Oh, I can't start yet without giving credit to this guy here, John Saremba. So all the photos, virtually all the photos that you'll see in this presentation were taken by John Saremba. Wonderful photos taken during the survey in the field that's being surveyed, and super valuable to have these photos. Not only does it make this presentation 10 million times better than it would be without the photos, but it's really handy to have John there with his telephoto lens. If we see the silhouette of a bird off in the distance, John can zoom in on it, take a photo, and then have a look at it at home and hopefully get an identification. So it's been super useful. So most of the photos are not credited to John. If they're not credited, then they're John's, but there's just a few that other photographers have taken, and they're credited accordingly.
What about this one?
Oh, that was me, actually. Good point. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that was me.
Good going, Carol.
It's pretty hard to do a selfie.
There are tripods and other cameras.
Yeah. Carol, you are so sharp.
Yeah.
You are small but sharp.
Thanks, Victoria.
Yes. So a little
strong.
bit of, and very strong. A little bit of background. There's probably nobody on this Zoom call that doesn't know this background, and that is that a portion of the field that's really on, I guess, on your right-hand side as you drive down Colony Farm Park Road has been leased to Trans Mountain Pipeline for assembling the pipe and staging it before pushing it or dragging it under the Fraser River. And about 11 acres, a little over 11 acres, I think it's 11.4 acres, have been leased from Metro Vancouver by Trans Mountain for up to 2 years. And the lease came into effect on March 8th of this year. Now, one of the reasons why, I'm just going to admit Liz here, this is one of the problems with me being a co-host. One of the reasons that BMN and many others were concerned about Trans Mountain being in this field is that it's actually a pretty special field. When you drive down Colony Farm Park Road there, you know, it looks, to some eyes, it just looks like a wasteland on either side, but it is actually anything but. It's a very special type of field or habitat. It's called old field habitat, which doesn't sound like a very technical term, but it actually is a technical description of a particular type of habitat. And that, of course, makes sense, that it's abandoned agricultural field, an abandoned agricultural field, or a field that's been left fallow for a sufficient number of years, that the grasses have grown up and shrubs like hardhack have appeared. And there's, in this particular field, there's a lot of red elderberry and some blackberry. But this field that Trans Mountain is in is also special in another respect, and that is that it's transversed by a number of waterways. And actually there's all kinds of water all throughout here most of the season. So it's really kind of special old field habitat. And old field habitat is also quite rare. Metro Vancouver manages getting on to 14,000 hectares, and only about 2.5% of that is old field habitat. Most of it being in Colony Farm Park. There's little bits at Boundary Bay and Campbell Valley, but most of it is in Colony Farm Park. So that's a really, really special park. And this field with these waterways and, well, drainages, I suppose I should call them, and various other features make this field really, really special, for at least 2 species, one of which, I can't change the slide.
Yeah, click down.
I'm trying that.
Just click the photo.
Yeah.
And
There we
then-
go. I don't know what was going on there.
It's because you let somebody in.
Oh, okay. I guess I don't know. One of the species that's a really important feature of this field is this snail called the Oregon forest snail. And this is a rare and endangered species. It's got the highest protection under federal species at risk legislation, and it's red listed under provincial legislation. And it's, well, I've never seen one. They're rare, of course. It's about the size of a loonie, the mature snail. And the way to tell that it's an Oregon forest snail is it's got this little lip here on it, on the shell on its back. So apparently, well, if you look at most snails, it just goes straight down. But this Oregon forest snail, it's a little bit like the lip of a bowl. You know, if you had a turned bowl, pottery bowl, sometimes they're turned over just a little bit.
It's a
And
gutter.
that little, yeah, a little bit. It's called the apertural lip, and it's curved up. So that's what's distinctive about this Oregon forest snail. There's another species that's really a feature of this field, and that's the Lazuli bunting. And I see that Paul Steeves, this is Paul Steeves' photo, and he has it as his background here tonight because it's such a gorgeous photo. I can see why he chose it. So this is a photograph, Paul's photograph of the male Lazuli bunting, and you can see they're just little blue dazzlers. And so they're really a feature bird, not of Colony Farm, but especially of the field that we're doing our survey in. And just to illustrate this point, just looking on the left-hand panel here, this is a map from iNaturalist that shows the sightings of the Lazuli bunting over the last, I don't know, 3-4 years. iNaturalist hasn't been around all that long, although you can add historic sightings. And so the sightings are indicated by these little blue icons here. So you can see there was a sighting out here on the north arm of the Fraser. There's one out here in Pitt Meadows, one down in Surrey, one up here, I don't know where that is, in the Widgeon, getting close up there. And here, over here, if you zoom in, you see that most of the sightings are really just in Colony Farm and in this survey field. So this is where the Lazuli buntings come to breed every summer in the Lower Mainland. And there's really nowhere else that they go. Most of them, I suppose, go to the Okanagan, and I know Larry can tell us much more about that. But in the Lower Mainland, this is where the Lazuli buntings go. So Colony Farm is famous amongst birders for the Lazuli buntings.
Victoria, just a comment. It's Gabe.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. The first time I saw the lazuli was right in front of me along the hedge grove on the west side of the gardens 2 weeks ago on Monday, and a male flew right in front of me. So I checked on Tuesday. I've been checking along there and with other birders, but mainly just on my own. I heard 3 different individual birds in the trees along that side. So they're definitely in and nesting now. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're named after the gemstone lapis lazuli or lapis lazuli. I mean, everybody pronounces it differently, but you can see why they would be called that. They're such gorgeous things. Okay, so just moving on, here's the field that we're doing our survey in. So just to orient you, there's the Lougheed Highway. This is Colony Farm Road. This is the Forensic Institute, Community Gardens, Coquitlam River, of course. And this westernmost trail along the field is called the Perimeter Trail. And this is where the 11 and 11.4 acres are that Trans Mountain has leased. And so there is no public access to the Perimeter Trail right now, of course. Can't get in there. It's all barred. There's security. Those of you that are familiar with this trail will know that it's very wet over there. This photo was taken by Brian at the end of December. And this is the Perimeter Trail at that time of the year. And if you rode your bike through there, I think you'd get wet up to above your ankles for sure. That's quite wet. If Trans Mountain wasn't there right now, it certainly wouldn't be that wet now, but there's a lot of water in that field. This is what it looks like now. So this is looking up the Perimeter Trail. You can see that there's been a lot of gravel put on the trail and these wooden planks that are actually bolted together. And I must say, I feel slightly misled by various communications from Trans Mountain. We've been told repeatedly about laying down of access mats over the earth so that the soil doesn't get compacted. And I must say, I pictured something in a sisal. I don't know, I was picturing something totally different than this. So they say, this is a recent communication from Trans Mountain, site preparation includes mowing of tall grasses. Well, they've mowed the tall grasses, that's for sure. They installed the geotextile fabric and gravel and laying of access mats. And I can only assume that these wooden planks are access mats, but not at all what I pictured an access mat would be. I had no idea this is what it would look like. And it's also quite deep or high, depending on how you want to look at it. This is a photo taken by me. This is Lori Austin, who's admittedly quite petite, and we can't see her feet, but you can get an idea of how high the gravel is stacked up there. And then with these wooden planks.
I'd like to add something to that, Victoria, if I
Sure.
may. What are the rationales for Trans Mountain going into this area to try and alleviate some of the concerns on the part of naturalists? Was the fact that, in quotes, this site had already been extensively disturbed as a result of the installation of a major water main under the Fraser River through this. However, this is one of the other things that concerned us. All along, we had asked for a site plan to try and get a sense of how much more area was going to be disturbed and the extent of the boundary. And it's quite clear to us now that when they put up the fence, we had assumed to be a much narrower section that would have this access, but no, it's quite wide, and they've gone literally from one fence boundary to the other. It's very, very wide, much wider, probably double or triple the width that was used for installing the trench and backfilling of the water main area. The only hope that I have in terms of rehabilitation, the only benefit of this extreme disturbance to the area is that unfortunately, there wasn't a very good rehabilitation project done after the Metro Vancouver water main was done. They ended up, we did a survey with the help of John Reynolds over the winter, and we found a lot of diverse plant species along the right of way in this area, along the trail. But unfortunately, most of them were invasive species. So I'm hoping that that one side benefit of laying down all this material is when they scrape it back, we can get rid of some of the invasive species and hopefully get some native species reestablished in this area.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to imagine that right now. This is a picture
No.
taken by John looking south, of course, towards the Port Man. You can see that there's been a fortune of lumber.
Yeah.
Oh,
You can see it stacked up down here. And if we were able to turn around, this extends northward right up to the Lougheed. You could land a plane on this for sure. I don't know, not a 747 maybe, but you could certainly land a plane.
One
on
thing
this.
that they didn't tell us and wasn't ever indicated on their plan, the only information we got was the alignment within Colony Farm. And just where you see the stacks of wood there, that's the approximate boundary, the southwest boundary of Colony Farm Park. But unfortunately, there's old field habitat on the other side that's under control of the Forensic Institute and the provincial government. And it's equally as valuable in terms of old field habitat. And a large section, even larger than what you're looking in here, now is completely covered with wood at this time of the year. So there was never any indication that that work was going to proceed to that extent beyond the boundary of the park. But it certainly is quite a massive undertaking there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think,
add something. It's Lori
Yeah.
talking here.
yeah.
Sorry. One of the other issues was they removed most of the riparian zone when they cleared
Yes.
everything to put down this matting. And so the area where the Lazuli buntings normally might go, a lot of it was cleared out. A lot of the blackberry shrubbery and
Yeah.
small trees and things. Maybe you were going to talk about that,
No,
Victoria.
no, that's just fine. Thanks.
So that
Thanks.
was another concern,
Yeah.
along with water contamination, because there's a lot of silt coming off that gravel, and there's supposed to be some special fencing to
Silt fencing.
capture that, the silt fencing,
Oops.
which wasn't really attached properly. You can kind of see it there on the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
And so that was another concern, because there was wetland all around, and we knew there were frogs and there were ducks earlier, and I'm sure
Yeah.
Victoria will show.
Muskrat and whatnot too. Yeah. Yeah.
So lots of concerns around this,
Yes.
we've noticed.
So this leads quite nicely into really what our purpose for doing this. I mean, obviously we were dismayed when Trans Mountain received the access to the park. And so that really was the driver for doing this bird survey, which I'm going to move into now. So our stated purpose is to try to determine if Trans Mountain construction, and this is going to be, there has been a lot of noise just laying that so-called matting. I don't know, we're down there one morning. They just seemed to be lifting up those wooden planks with some kind of a machine and letting them drop over and over again. So has been very noisy. It's going to get noisier once they start assembling the pipes. There's going to be odor from the welding of the pipes. There's going to be lighting. We're not sure whether they're working 24 hours a day or not, but they're going to require some lighting. And of course, there's concern about altering the drainage. This is an extremely wet field. So we'd like to know if the construction activities and also whatever they do to try to restore that area affect the birds' numbers and the species that occur in that field. Now, of course, this is, you can see a limitation with, scientifically, this is a ridiculous purpose because we have no baseline data or anything like that. But nonetheless, we can possibly try to back end that and, in fact, monitor if Trans Mountain does have an effect on bird populations. We can monitor their bouncing back and capture that by our survey after Trans Mountain has cleared off the field. We, of course, have another unstated purpose, and that is really just to regularly keep an eye on what Trans Mountain is doing down there. So a little bit about methods. The type of survey that we're doing is a point count survey. So it's not like the Christmas bird count where you're walking and counting and identifying all the birds that you see. This point count survey is based on observation stations, and we have 7 observations set up on the 2 arms of the trail that are still open to the public around that field. Each station we record and we identify and count and record all the birds within a 50-meter radius of each of those stations. We do that for a timed 5 minutes. So I think everyone else who's done the survey will agree that one of the most interesting things we've learned is how your skill in identifying a bird by its song or call improves by just being out there and listening to them. It's been certainly interesting to me. You know what a towhee sounds like, so that you can actually kind of screen that out from your soundscape and focus in on the new sound that you're hearing and try to identify that. So it's been really, really interesting. And I think we've all gotten much better at identifying birds just by their sound. I've always heard that a really good birder never lifts up their binoculars. Now, I don't think I'll hurt anyone's feelings when I say that none of us are really good birders. That's another limitation of this survey. We're not Larry Cowens or John Reynolds or Colin Claessens. Most of the observers are competent birders. I wouldn't include myself in that. But I'm sure if we had Larry join us some morning, we'd hear and identify many more bird species than we do normally.
I would like to add, Victoria, though, that one of the additions, really valuable additions to our team was Gay, when she joined our team. Mm-hmm. From my perspective, both her musical and artistic background, she has phenomenal hearing in terms of being able to pick out the birds. And because the point count survey is done in a grassy field, a lot of these birds are preparing for nesting, so they're not necessarily high up. So I would say probably, just a rough guess, we're only seeing about 25% of the birds we identify. The 75% we're hearing. And for all the members, having Gay there, we've learned such a great deal. That's one of the valuable things, is by going on a regular basis, you not only learn to identify the bird, but more importantly, you learn the bird's behavior, you learn the bird's characteristics, their habitats, and all those things form a valuable part of bird identification. So in terms of birding, having someone like Gay out there to really tell us the difference between a robin and a towhee and a black-headed grosbeak is really refreshing. And it just makes it easier for us then to, when we go off on our own, understand, oh yeah, that is a bird I've heard. And for example, you'll be talking about the Savannah Sparrow. That's one of the birds that I'd never heard or seen before, but I didn't realize how common it was.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, John. So I don't know what my next slide is. Oh, yes, right. So here are our 4 stations. I want to get into the bird survey here. Here's our 4 stations just on the, just north of the Forensic Institute. So our first station, station number 1, is just around these linden trees, quite close to the perimeter trail. And so here's our station here. This is a circle indicating a 50-meter radius. So as I say, we count and try to identify and record everything we hear for 5 minutes within that circle. But in addition to that, we also record and I count and identify and record everything beyond that 50-meter observation circle. So, and we record, actually we record absolutely everything we see, or as much as we can see. If we see fresh deer tracks or coyote scat or anything, it all gets written down. And we also make a note of what's going on over here on the Trans Mountain site. Our second station is just south of the works yard for the Metro Vancouver Parks people. Third station is was a particularly important station, bit of a hot station for us, especially in March, because it straddles these wetlands here. So this is a big wetland that goes over towards the perimeter trail, and then there's another wetland here, which I guess ultimately connects somehow to the Fraser River. I don't know. So we saw a lot of birds here early on. And our 4th station is over near the Labyrinth, near Colony Farm Road. And it's also conveniently close to some bird feeders over here at Simon's trailer. And so we get a little bit of spillover into this observation radius.
Victoria, I just want to make a comment. It's Gay.
Yep.
Even though this is considered old field, between site 3 and site,
I'm not too bad. I'm in the middle.
Yep.
in the middle, so between site 3 and site 4, that there was a program with senior farm workers several years ago, but within probably about 6 years. And that whole area was plowed and planted and used for a special program. So even though we consider it as maybe unused space, it's a very fertile farm, and it's something that we should remember when we're looking at birds and walking around. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Gay. Moving on to the next 3 stations. As I say, we have 7 stations. So these are 3 stations. Here's Colony Farm Road. It's just this on the trail that's right adjacent to Colony Farm Road. And station 5, I don't know whether you can see on your screen, but it's actually lined up with a small waterway. Oh, actually, here it is down here that runs into the field, as is station 7. There's a waterway there. Station 6 is significant because it's lined up with a very important speed bump on the Colony Farm Road. We had to have some feature, so it's called the speed bump stop. But it gives great views out into this old field habitat.
I should point out, Victoria, that there is some science behind our
oh, I forgot.
method of
Yes.
choosing. Yes, this
Yep,
actually follows the provincial Breeding Bird Atlas convention for doing bird point counts, and hence the 50-meter radius. But also the other criteria is to avoid double counting birds if possible. The center to center distance is approximately 200 meters, but we've made some adjustments because we are interested in finding habitat features that were somewhat characteristic of the other side of the field as well. So we did juggle some of the center points.
We designed it to suit our purposes, actually, I would say. So for these 3 stations, it's not a complete circle. The circle's actually truncated. That's what these big red rectangles mean. But because we had noticed that the birds were using the hedgerow on the other side of Colony Farm Park Road, that's part of our circle. So we do include that. So about 10 meters into the field on the to the east of the Colony Farm Park Road. So here's Station 1, closest to the Trans Mountain site. You can see some of the blue fencing there with these lovely linden trees, which looked like they were about the same age as the lindens at Riverview. So I'm sure there's a story behind them. Station 2, don't have pictures of all these stations, just want to show you some key features. But Station 2 was kind of in the news in mid-May because there was a rare bird sighting there, Say's phoebe. And you can actually see the solar panels in the works yard in the background. And this is the Wetland Station, which was kind of a very key station in the early month or month and a half of our survey with the wetland. Right now, this water has pretty well totally dried up. And we were initially concerned it was due to what Trans Mountain was doing. They affected the drainage, but we've subsequently learned that this happens every year and it's perfectly natural. This is Station 5 with the waterway going across the field. There is a speed bump here too, but you can't, there's a lot of speed bumps along there. And this is what that waterway looks like now. The earlier picture was taken possibly in March. And this was taken, I don't know, maybe last week or something.
Yeah.
So, did somebody say something?
Yeah, I was just agreeing last week, I believe it was.
Okay. And then this is our last station again with a waterway. And you can see all the hardhack there. So the results, this is the interesting thing. So what have we seen? Well, we've seen a lot of these guys, a lot of spotted towhees. And interesting that John mentioned towhees, robins, and black-headed grosbeaks, because towhees and robins, we see a fair number of those. And I put these two birds first because if you're very, very new to birding, and I know no one on this call is, but really making the distinction between a towhee and a robin is one of the first things that people seem to be able to do, or this is what I've observed, that often people would say, well, I've never noticed the difference between those two birds. And once you notice a difference, it's kind of a gateway to all the other birds. So distinguishing a towhee from a robin is a thin edge of the wedge. We're not new birders, of course. We've moved on to trying to distinguish the sound of a robin from a black-headed grosbeak. And as John was saying, with some of Gay's help and help from others as well, I think we've got a few tricks to do that, but it still can be quite challenging. Lots of crows there, not surprisingly. This is actually
John's crow.
our pet crow. This crow follows us. John was talking earlier about, well, getting to know the habitat and the birds. We get to know the individual birds, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's really, really nice. These are our feathered friends now. So that guy in particular is, we call him John's bird, but yeah. There are a lot of these. I don't know whether you can see in this picture, ring-necked pheasant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's a male, and John's even got a picture of the male and the female. And these are massive big birds, so they're actually surprisingly hard to see in there, but they blend in so well. But you can hear them everywhere, and no mistaking the sound of a ring-necked pheasant. We never have to discuss whether that was a pheasant or not, unlike we have to with robins and black-headed grosbeaks.
That was one of the surprising things in the survey, just how many pheasants there are. I never realized there's a significant population that has survived the coyotes and other predators.
Yeah, it is surprising. So I'll just briefly go over some of the birds we've seen in the wetland area. And as I say, this was really early on in the survey. We started in March 2nd. And this is a picture probably from around that time. You can still see bits of frost there. And we've been there in the morning when it's been frozen over. So of course there were mallard ducks. I love this picture of these, John's picture of these mallard pair. And 2 months later, 3 months later, we got to see ducklings. There's been at least 6 shovelers in the wetland at one time, but we've identified other ducks, bufflehead, wood ducks, green-winged teal. And it was Christina Saremba who actually spotted this killdeer. Can you see the killdeer? It's see the mallard, but can you see the killdeer in this photo?
Yeah.
Yeah, over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's got really sharp eyes. We all bring something to this survey. And yeah, you can just barely see it. Yeah. And we were standing there with our bins glued to our eyes, looking at this killdeer, when what should fly over our right shoulders but a bittern, all legs and wings, and landed just about here, right in front of us. So that was a really, really special morning, because I think my understanding is that the bitterns are usually seen over on the other side of the park. So that was really special for us to see. And then the wetland, now that it's dried up, we're not really seeing too much around there. Where we're seeing the birds now is more in the open field. So we had a very obliging brown-headed cowbird come to have a look at us recently. You can see tell it's recently because there's the berries forming on the red elderberry already. Nice picture that John got there. Song sparrows. This is song sparrow field, song sparrow palooza. Nice little song sparrow, of course, with the little brown dot on its chest. There's even a legless subspecies of song sparrow there. We're quite surprised to see this, but it happens. It's a very special field, I keep telling you. Lots of white-crowned sparrows. They're also all over the place right now. And as John mentioned earlier, there's these Savannah sparrows. And I always was under the impression that Savannah sparrows were kind of rare. If they're rare elsewhere, it's because they're all down Coney Farm in that field. They are all over the place. And they're just a beautiful little sparrow, as you can see here, very delicate looking with this little yellow wash or yellow stripe over its eye. And they arrived around mid-April. And I think that's another gorgeous picture that John Saremba took. And around the time that was the height of the Savannah sparrows was a time when there was about a week when we'd walk along the trail, and as we walked, there'd be clouds of sparrows of different sorts rise up ahead of us, because they were all along either side of the trail in amongst the dandelions. So lots of Savannah sparrows, but there are also white-crowned sparrows and song sparrows and purple finches and house finches. And they were just all over the place. And it was really, really nice 2 surveys that we did when there were all these birds along the trail. And we just assumed that they were eating the seeds of the dandelions. But then one very observant observer noticed that they're not really eating the seeds. What they were eating were little insects on the dandelion flowers. These dandelion flowers were just covered with little tiny, tiny insects, just about, 2 millimeters long. And that seemed to be what the birds were eating. So that was really interesting. Unfortunately, we don't have a picture of the dandelion with the insects on, but maybe next year we'll get that. Another wonderful pair of birds that we've gotten to know on this survey is a pair of northern harriers. So we've seen the female. We usually nearly always see the male there. The male, of course, is this lighter gray color. The female's brown. She's nesting probably somewhere down here in the ground, not necessarily here, I don't mean that, but she's nesting on the ground somewhere. But we see the male coursing across the field very frequently. It's lovely, lovely to watch. Another very nice photo.
One of the really important things is the relationship between these old field habitat and the ability to support raptors, because of the voles that live in the old field habitat. And particularly overwintering, they don't necessarily have large amounts of food sources. So that's why this type of habitat, which is very rare in the lower mainland, is so critical.
Well, other raptors too. Thanks for that nice lead in there, John. Red-tailed hawks. Beautiful picture of red-tail with its red tail. And here's a red tail with a crow in pursuit, quite a common sight. And there's actually 3 red tails. We've seen 3 at once. This pair that's we think is in love. They were kind of circling around together. And there was another single red tail off the screen here, maybe gnashing its teeth, or I don't know what it was doing, but it wasn't joining in on this. Fabulous sighting we had in early April where was at least 2 northern shrikes. So these are little predatory songbirds. So it was lovely to see that. John was able to get some good photos with his telephoto lens. There and there.
Oh, yeah.
Oops, sorry, maybe I did that too fast. We've seen turkey vulture on a couple of occasions.
I should also point out, Victoria,
Yep.
that's the value of having multiple observers in the same area, because quite often you're so focused looking at one way, you forget to look upwards.
Yes.
And and that's why we're always looking for more observers, having multiple angles, both direction and also up above is really quite critical. And we've been able to capture some birds that if you had 1 or 2 people, you normally wouldn't, because we've had 4 or 5 people out volunteering.
Well, I know Cleon has said that when she sees us all looking at something, she deliberately turns the other way and looks. So, yeah. So I really like this picture. This is actually up on the CN tracks. You can see the elderberries in bloom, and you can see, I'm sure all the birders there can see the bird in this photo. And this is really next to song sparrows. This is one of the most common birds that's using the field right now. Can you see the bird there?
Yep.
Yep. Common yellowthroat. Lovely picture of the common yellowthroat.
And this one has a band on it, I see.
I hadn't noticed that before. I know. Yeah. So it's been banded presumably on the other side of the park by the Vark folks. And now is the time for swallows. So tree swallows, they arrived at the end of March, I think it was, and they're occupying these old unmaintained boxes. I don't think these boxes have been cleaned for 8 or 10 years. But you can see they're definitely occupying them. This one's not letting anybody else in there, and there's presumably its mate. We're also now seeing violet green swallows, cliff swallows, northern rough-winged swallows, and barn swallows. Quite a number of barn swallows, which is really nice to see, especially after that rather depressing talk we had on barn swallows and their horrific declines. We're not seeing massive numbers, but I guess there was one day there were 20 that were skimming over the grasses with their rather ribbon-like wings and tails. Just lovely to see. And then we had one very cloudy day where we had, I don't know, maybe 30 Vose swifts overhead. Maybe the insects were low that day. So that was also a very special sighting. And then finally, we did see a Lazuli bunting. It wasn't actually on our survey, and it was pointed out to us by Colin Klassen. It was over near Simon's trailer, but it was really, really nice to see this guy. And we're hoping to see many more and maybe see where exactly they're, what part of the field they're using to breed in this year, now that some of their regular area is unavailable. So just moving on here, so just to highlight some of our sightings. So in March, we did 9 surveys from March 2nd to the 29th. And I've just arbitrarily drawn out some of the birds of note. There were a lot of, not a lot, there were, I don't know, maybe 3 great blue heron that were using the wetland.
They're still not going around there then, the herons.
They're not there now. Well, it's dried up now. But this, when there was water in the wetland area, Carol, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Northern Harrier, northern shoveler, tree swallow, and then kind of the regular birds. It's kind of funny to include Anna's hummingbird in with, black-capped chickadees and robins. But anyway, this is my own determination, totally arbitrary, really. In April, again, we did 9 surveys from April 2nd to 29th. This time we had the bittern, the goldfinch were back, barn swallows, yellowthroats, Harrier, saw the shrikes, Savannah sparrows were back, the swallows, and flycatcher and yellow rump warbler. And in May, this is now when it's getting really exciting. So we've only done 7 surveys. We've got 2 more to do in May yet, but now we're getting the black-headed grosbeaks, cedar waxwing, Lazuli bunting, orange-crowned warbler, rufous hummingbird, seen a few of those. Had a wonderful sighting of a pair of western tanagers as well. So that was really, really nice. So this is the only chart I'm going to show you. This is the number of species just within those 50-meter radii of our stations. So we started out with 23. This is just as you would expect, of course. If this didn't happen, you'd know something is pretty seriously wrong. And 35 species in April and 44 species in May. And that is hopefully going to, May will increase, no doubt, because we've still got 2 more surveys. We'll see what happens in June. And as I say, we look at everything. So this frog, there was some debate over whether it was a bullfrog or a green frog, both invasive species. We look at buttercups even. This one had a nice bee on it. We looked at this little skipper. We look at, honestly, we look at coyote scat. We look at everything. Mm-hmm. So, you see what fun it is. Why not join us? It'd be great to have a couple of teams, because I see this survey as being quite a long, I don't want to say a long and drawn out thing, but ideally it would last a couple of years. I think it would be nice if we could do that. And you can get a lot out of this. I think you can certainly improve your bird identification skills. There's no question. Cleon, she specializes in crows, but she's really got crows down, and she's moving on to pheasants. But she started out, not being really good at birding by ear, but she's really, really into it now. She's bought a really good pair of binoculars, and she's right in there looking at the western tanagers and the black-headed grosbeaks and identifying those. One kind of fun thing you can do is learn some really good mnemonics. Some of them are a little bit naughty, but this makes them memorable. And of course, I'm too much of a lady to go into this any further right now. I could tell you later, but I'm not going to tell you right now. And as we've said a couple of times, and a couple of the other people who've chimed in have said, you get familiar with some of the regular like feathered characters, not these characters. And this has been a real eye-opener, doing the same walk over and over. You know where the song sparrows, the pair of song sparrows are nesting, and what you can expect at each station. It's just been really, really nice. And of course, there's the opportunity to just socialize. And I know we don't look terribly friendly here, but we actually are very, very friendly. And you can also, of course, keep an eye on the activity over at the Trans Mountain site. So if you are interested, it's very informal. We go twice a week, usually on a Monday and Thursday, but if it's raining or if it's windy, we rearrange that. And it's not, you can just get your name put on the email list, and it's just whoever shows up. We don't necessarily even say, arrange who's going to go. It's just whoever shows up. It's very, very loosely arranged. That may change if we get deluged by volunteers wanting to join the survey, but we can handle it. So that's it. Thank you.
Well done.
Okay.
Thanks, Victoria. That was great.
Okay, now just
Yes.
get out of this and
Get
see
back
what
to
time it
everybody.
is. And it's 10 to 8. My goodness. Okay.
Boy, you should have
was
gone on
longer.
you should have gone on for another 7 minutes.
Does anyone
So-
have any questions or?
Can I just say something? It's Carol. Your survey is very similar to the one we did down there for herons.
Is
But
it?
We had 12 stations and it was 4 minutes at each station. And if we counted a heron between stations, we included it with the next one. And one Friday I did it in March and there I counted 74.
Wow.
That's when
Wow.
when there used to be the nests and the
Yeah.
wildlife management area.
Yeah. They were mostly in the cottonwoods behind the, on the river by the reserve there.
Yeah.
Great. Well, maybe just put out, is there anybody that might be interested in coming out?
Yeah, great.
Oh,
Evelyn. Just send an email to Burke Mountain Nats and I'll get you on the email list. And just whenever you're available, just show up.
That's great, Evelyn. We'll see you there.
Yeah, great.
It's a wonderful reprieve from all the COVID restrictions. It's like going on a nature meditation. Wonderful. But you get to talk in between.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we've all really, really enjoyed it. And it's nice to have it at the beginning of the day, and then you've got the rest of the day to get on with what you have to do.
And it's been a wonderful way to learn birdsong gradually since we started in really the end of winter. And
Yes.
it was a little cold in March, but we persevered. But you could just gradually add on a few birds every week. And so you'd get familiar with them. And it was just a wonderful way to increase your bird knowledge.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lori. Yeah, we started at the right time. We dithered for quite a while and then just decided, oh, let's just do it. So I'm really glad we did just get started. Yeah.
One of the things that I found really quite interesting is you also get a sense of the value of some of the specific habitat features, particularly even though a lot of us are initially opposed to invasive species like blackberry. It's amazing, particularly sparrows. If you have a small row of blackberry to allow them to perch and hide, many of our sparrow sightings are in and around blackberry. But certainly the thickets and the hedges in that field are so critical. That's where we're seeing a lot of the territorial calling for birds. And I think it's giving us much more confidence. We're hoping to have input into the restoration rehabilitation plan after the TMX project is finished with Metro Vancouver. And I think that all of us have developed a much better understanding of what would be good to plant in those areas. And certainly anywhere you have these thickets and hedges, you have more likelihood of birds in terms of particularly those that like to perch up and either call for territory or hunt for insects from those perches.
It's a really special field. It's a combination of the wetness and the blackberry and the red elderberry and the hardhack, even the reed canary grass.
Yes. A lot of people don't realize just how much drainage there is, particularly along the right-of-way that the Trans Mountain is on, and how critical those wetlands for overwintering. One of the thoughts we also had, and John Reynolds, I believe, suggested this, or Lee Harding, that we really lack wetlands within some of our old field habitat. And it would be nice to look at possibly a constructed wetland, as long as it doesn't bring in unwanted species. But that's, unfortunately, a lot of that area dries up during the summer. And to be able to have something that perhaps is maintained to give us more water during the year might be something to consider.
Yeah. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Or?
Oh, I'm just wondering, can you hear me, Carolyn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long is this, are they going to be there, Trans Mountain? And are you going to be doing these counts the whole time? What is your plan?
Well, I think it's probably clear we don't have much of a plan about anything.
Well, we had We had
You
already
planning-
talked about over the winter cutting back to perhaps as the nesting season is over to maybe once a week, and then during the winter once every 2 weeks or once a month.
Yeah.
But certainly you can maintain at least once a month over the winter quite easily for the next couple of years. And Trans Mountain is supposed to have the work done. They have the right of way for up to 2 years. They'd like
With
to be
some extensions.
with some
possible, too.
extensions, yes. They'd like to be done sooner, but this is construction. They've already had several delays in getting started. And so they could be there the full time. And even when they leave, they have the ability to wait 6 months before they do the restoration. So even when they're gone, they're not really gone. They've just moved the construction equipment out.
I just wanted to make a comment. It's Gay. I think of being present as advocacy, and that has really borne itself out because many people have come up to me at the garden at Colony Farm, and I've been there 20 years, and they ask what we're doing and what's going on and ask questions. And that's happened again and again, almost every time I'm there. So I just wanted to speak to that sometimes just having a presence on the site, it really is advocacy.
Yeah. And this forces us to have a regular presence there as well. Not forces. I mean, we don't want to give it up. But yeah.
That's a good point, Gay. In fact, we've had some very good candid discussions with several park staff, and we get the sense without being told that our presence there is a good thing. And that the more eyes on what's going on at the Trans Mountain area, even though we're not all that close, the fact that we're out there regularly monitoring, and the park staff have been asking us questions in terms of what species we're seeing and what we're sharing with them, and they're certainly interested in that.
I'd like to add one thing. Victoria didn't show you all the fantastic graphs and data.
Database, the
yeah.
spreadsheet she developed, and Darlene is compiling the data.
Yes.
And I got to give
Darlene.
I got to
Darlene.
give credit to Darlene, because sometimes you have 6 birders with 6 different counts, and she has to transcribe all of that. And some of our counts are a little bit more consensus based, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to say I appreciate what Victoria and Darlene have been doing.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's, I think,
we'll get to see that part this time. They do-
subject of another presentation. You couldn't squeeze it all in. And actually, that's another thing. If somebody wants to learn Excel, you know, as long as you got a few basics, we're certainly willing to brush up your skills there too. Yeah. Another great opportunity for that too. So there's lots of things you can get out of this. Yeah.
Great. Did you have anything else, Victoria?
No.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Well, we'll just put a sort of push out there for anybody that wants to do a presentation for the show and share. We'd really like it to come from the members, and even if you don't think you can do a longer presentation, even 10 or 15 minutes, if you're willing to share your screen and show some photos and tell some stories, that would be fabulous.
Can you remind us what days you're out there again from 8 till 10:30?
Well, usually we aim for Monday and Thursday. We've done a few weekends so that people who work during the week can join us.
Okay.
But all you have to do is just ask if you want your name put on the email list, and then you'll just get notifications of when we go.
It
Okay.
is weather dependent. We have had to move some a day later. For example, we're going out Friday this week instead of Thursday, because if it's a heavy rain, we shouldn't be out there counting birds. We've done it in a light rain and it's been pretty successful. But if it's too windy and it's too wet, we just go the following day.
Okay, thanks.
It's good. It's really, really good. You feel it's a wonderful experience. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Please join us, Kathy.
There are some mornings I have other things to do, so that's why I just thought I'd check.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And I would like to make one comment as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Vlad.
Congratulating Victoria that not even one of your images in the presentation was over where the people are on the right-hand side or whatever. That means you had the right aspect ratio for the screen, leaving the thing on the side. Not going over like up to now, there was almost everyone that I've been present at. There was you know, some going over the pictures.
Well,
Or
thank you for
under-
mentioning that, Vladimir, because I did something different with my PowerPoint and I put it in landscape mode.
Yeah.
And
Or
maybe
if you
that made
just-
the difference.
Or if you just do it in a 4:3 aspect ratio, it will be the same.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's like, you know, kids nowadays, everything is in portrait
Thank you,
because of
Vlad.
TikTok, not landscape. But when they do PowerPoint, where they use things other than PowerPoint, it's always in this landscape mode. So the slides fill much more of the screen, I think. So maybe
Anyway,
that
it
was
was
part of
great.
it. Great.
Great show.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's John's photos. John's photos. That's what made it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Well,
Okay,
thank you
well-
for inviting me. It was great.
Great. Glad you enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Very good
Thanks,
presentation.
Victoria.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.
Hi, Michelle and Ty.
Fun to tell you about it.
We got overseas people here as well. We have Michelle and Ty from Victoria. So
Oh,
Hi,
yeah. Different time zone almost.
not quite Hawaii, but getting
Yeah.
closer.
Good
Good
to see you both.
teamwork.
Yeah.
That was very enjoyable.
Good.
I
Glad
think
you
we
liked
should
it.
put it, I think we should put it out there as a recording. It's good, very good quality.
Nothing personal was said. That was my concern. Although I did say
Yeah.
something about Cleon, didn't I? Yeah.
It was complimentary, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Nothing rude was said. So,
That makes it even better for a recording.
yeah, no. Okay. Well, thanks again. Thanks, Ian.
Good night.
You.
Thank
Good night.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.
Thanks.
Take care.
Good night.
Presentation.
Thank you. Very good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Excellent.